Hello, my name is Justin Coffey, and today I'm going to be talking about inclusive leadership. While I was researching inclusive leadership, I found two videos that really struck home what inclusive leadership means for me. And so in the first video that I found, Jill Willis interviews Suzanne Carrington, and Suzanne Carrington is a professor at a university in Australia, and they talk about inclusive leadership through this interview. So some of the things that Suzanne talks about for the values of inclusive leadership are respect, honesty, trust, opportunities for success, seeking those spots where your followers can be successful, identifying the strengths of your followers so you know where they can be successful, collaboration, and she really talked about empathy and how if you are an inclusive leader, then you have to have that empathy. You have to put yourself in others' shoes and know how others feel. She talked about how to be an inclusive leader, and some of the things that she talked about is utilizing democratic leadership, where you get some ideas from other people, and it's not just one single person leading the group. It's a collection of ideas from different people to make decisions. Inclusive leaders look for people to come together. They're not trying to push anyone away. They're trying to include everyone so everyone comes together. They constantly seek feedback from the followers to make sure that everyone is getting what they need and that everyone is included and everyone's feedback has value. They don't just listen to what someone says and then say, oh, that's okay, I'm not going to pay attention to that. They value everyone's feedback. Inclusive leaders have an open door policy where followers are free to come in and express concerns or talk about situations or problems. They model inclusion, so you can't just talk about inclusion. You need to live your life in an inclusive manner. Relationships are a huge deal for inclusive leaders. They like to form and build relationships, and that's a key thing to get the trust and respect from the followers, and they reciprocate respect. So they are constantly giving respect to the followers, and the followers in return are also given respect. So that was the first video that I watched. The other video that I watched was a TED Talk, and this TED Talk was by Joseph Trimble, and this TED Talk wasn't necessarily solely focused on inclusive leadership, but the idea of inclusive leadership weaved its way through the entire TED Talk, so I thought that it fit really well. One of the things that Mr. Trimble talked about was bidding farewell to the human alpha male leader. And I think if you just ask someone what a leader is, that's what we historically think of as a leader. They're macho, they're aggressive, they force their way on other people. And he is saying that we can say goodbye to those types of leaders now. The reason why we can get rid of them is he says that the world is getting smaller because of the internet, the access to travel, the worldwide media. And because the world is getting smaller, races and cultural backgrounds, languages are all being spread throughout the world. It's no longer just one language in one part of the world and one culture in another part of the world. That culture and language and race is being spread throughout the entire world. Because of this changing environment, we can change our ideas of leadership. And so he talked about what that means. And what him and his partner did is they interviewed the top leaders of companies, and they specifically focused on diverse leaders. They didn't focus on the white alpha male leader. They wanted diverse leaders, and they asked them what are the most important characteristics of leadership. And so those those leaders came up with this list. These are the top leaders of companies, the top diverse leaders of companies, and they said the most important thing is adaptability and integrity, being an authentic leader, being honest, and being a communicator. Those are the 5 most important characteristics of leadership. And then they also said, what are the least important things? What do you not need to be a leader? And they listed aggressive, conflict inducer, dominant, self-centered, status conscious. So those are kind of the ideas that we have always thought about of the alpha male leader. And those are the ideas that these leaders of the future are saying are the least important. So it's with that that Mr. Trimble says we can say goodbye to the alpha male leader. So he talks about inclusive leadership, although he didn't necessarily call it inclusive leadership. His ideas are perfectly in line with inclusive leadership. He says that inclusive leaders should keep the values and traditions of the followers. You're not trying to change everyone to fit a particular mold. You're not allowing, you are actually embracing, and you want people to keep their values and traditions. Again, so culture and diversity is valued. You're seeking that diverse culture. So he also says that people follow different leaders and that people lead differently, and that's okay. Not everyone wants to follow the exact same type of leader, and not everyone leads the exact same kind of way, and that's okay. And we need to embrace that there's different types of people in the world, and different people follow different leaders. So one of the main things that he also talked about is that inclusive leadership needs to be teaming with respect, and that's kind of a common theme that I've seen in both videos is the value of respect. So now that we know a little bit about inclusive leadership, let's talk about how teachers can apply inclusive leadership. And so one way that teachers can apply inclusive relationship is model the way. If you want to create an inclusive environment, then you yourself need to have inclusive values and include everyone and value everyone's diversity. So one of the things that teachers need to do is create an inclusive classroom and culture. Value different cultures and diversity. Again, it's not just that you have different cultures in your classroom, it's that you value those cultures. You want those people to share their ideas and get their opinions. And of course, building relationships with students is a key factor for teachers that want to apply inclusive leadership. So teachers can also inspire a shared vision. So one way that teachers can use inclusive leadership to inspire a shared vision is communicate the benefits of inclusion. I think a lot of our students don't see the point. They don't know why they have to get along with so and so. They don't know why they have to sit next to someone of a different race. And so I think that it's important that teachers communicate the benefits and how inclusion is important and helps us grow. Another thing we can do is share success stories of inclusion. So when you hear things, when you find inspirational videos, when you have students talk about how their life was changed, maybe former students or current students talking about how their life was changed because they were included in the group, then we as teachers need to share those stories so that students are inspired. And then another thing that we need to do as teachers is celebrate diversity. Again, not just be happy that there is diversity, but we need to celebrate that diversity. Moving along, another way that teachers can apply inclusive leadership is to challenge the process. So we need to step out there and take some risks as teachers. One way that we could do that is share our experience with other teachers. So if you have an inclusive environment in your classroom and things are working well, then sharing that with other teachers so that other teachers can model your classroom is a great way to take a risk and challenge the process. Another cool thing would be to create a school-wide movement of inclusion. So maybe you want to make like little bracelets that remind students to be inclusive. Maybe you have t-shirts, maybe you have like a class motto, maybe you have a class handshake or something to remind students about the importance of inclusion. And then always continue to learn and grow about how to be more inclusive and how to apply inclusive leadership. Another thing that teachers need to do is enable others to act. And this is kind of the whole deal of inclusive leadership is enabling others to act. So gives students a voice about classroom norms and practices so that this is their classroom. It's not just the teacher's classroom who's telling you what to do, but we want an inclusive classroom where everyone in the classroom is participating and their opinions are valued and their ideas are valued. So we want to give the students a voice about our classroom norms and practices, our rules, our procedures, and things like that. Listen for feedback. We want to make sure that we are hearing what our students are telling us. Okay, if things aren't working, if things are working, if they see things that could work better, we want to make sure that we listen to their feedback, and of course reciprocate respect. If we want them to respect our classroom and this inclusive leadership and the inclusive classroom, then we need to give them respect, and they will give that respect back in return. And then finally, one of my favorite things that we can do is encourage the heart. So we need to celebrate success and change. Have parties, talk about it, let people share things that where they come from, their culture, have them bring in food from their culture, all these things to celebrate the success of an inclusive classroom and change. And we need to recognize improvement from our students. If we have students who are shy and not so certain about this inclusive classroom, and we see them come out of their shell and become inclusive, then we need to recognize that improvement. Another thing is to create a classroom culture that can be carried to other aspects of students' lives. So one thing that I did in my classroom is we created a secret handshake in our classroom. And that secret handshake, when they came into the room every day, that reminded them that when they're in this classroom, they are part of the family and they're valued. And so I think that by creating that culture of the secret handshake, the students were able to take that idea that they're valued and that they're important and carry that on to other aspects of their lives. And I think that's something that teachers can do to apply inclusive leadership. So creating this kind of environment and being an inclusion leader is not the easiest thing in the world to do. There's challenges. And so some of the challenges of inclusion leadership are ignoring those preconceived ideas and prejudices. It's difficult sometimes because we all have judgments in our head, and so we have to ignore those judgments and be inclusive and invite them in and embrace the diversity and celebrate that diversity. Another, I think, hard thing for teachers is helping others value diversity. So it's one thing for you to embrace that change and the diversity, but if you have students in your room who are not embracing that change, who don't see value in embracing that and being inclusive, then that can ruin the entire environment. So helping others find value in diversity, I think, is a tough thing for teachers. And then finally, sometimes when you're in southwestern Kansas, it's difficult to find diverse perspectives. Sometimes we don't have the most diverse population out here in southwest Kansas, and so sometimes just finding diversity can be a problem. But that's changing rapidly, and the population of the United States and the world is becoming more mixed and diverse, and so I think that that's a great thing for education. I think that's a great thing for our students, and I think that we really need to embrace it. So that's my spiel on inclusion leadership. Here are some sources that I found. The interview that I had with Suzanne Carrington, I found on YouTube, and I will include a link to both of these videos in the description of this video. And then the video that I found on Joseph Trimble was a TEDx talk, and again, I will include that link in the description. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.